Hi, this is Scott Wilkinson, host of Home Theater Geeks. In episode 298, I chat with Tyler Pruitt of SpectraCal and Tom Forsythe, an AVS member who recently bought a Vizio P-Series UHD HDR display. So stay tuned.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Home Theater Geeks is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Home Theater Geeks with Scott Wilkinson, recorded March 31st, 2016. Episode 298, Vizio P-Series. This episode of Home Theater Geeks is brought to you by Epson's new EcoTank printers. With Epson's line of SuperTank all-in-one printers, you can print thousands of documents without running out of ink. EcoTank is loaded and ready to print when you are. Visit epson.com/EcoTank to find out more. Hey there, Scott Wilkinson here, the Home Theater Geek and editor of AVSForum.com. This week, I have two guest geeks joining me. First up is Tyler Pruitt, technical liaison at SpectraCal. Hey, Tyler, welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going, Scott?
Good, thanks. Thanks for being here. Also, and for the first time, I'm pretty sure, I have an AVS Forum member who is, his name is Tom. He's known on the forum as Thomas FXLT, and he's one of the first people to buy a Vizio P-Series. Hey, Tom, thanks for being here.
Hey guys, how are you?
We're doing great. Thanks a lot for being on the show, because what I want to talk about today is the new Vizio P-Series. And boy, you were Johnny on the spot. You went out there and bought one right away. And we're going to talk about all sorts of things regarding this new TV that I'm very excited about. But before we do, I want to make sure everyone knows those of you who are watching live at live.twit.tv can join the chat room there, or at irc.twit.tv, and post questions as we go, and I'll pass along as many as I can. So I'd like to start with just the P-Series, this new Vizio display. Talk about what it is and why it's so important. Tom, what drew you to it once you saw the announcement, which I posted at 6 o'clock in the morning on a week ago Tuesday?
Well, I think, the initial marketing was, really struck me because they, layered the HDR10 capability on top of the Dolby Vision announcement. I mean, I think everybody expected some kind of a mainstream HDR set coming down the pipe here, but I don't know that anybody expected them to release a set that had both Dolby Vision and HDR10. And
although we have to make it clear that at the moment it has Dolby Vision, but HDR10 is expected in a firmware update within 90 days, they said. So we can hope. Exactly. We have to assume that that's true, and that's very good news. I think one of the most important things to start with here is that basically they had the reference series, which they were talking about for 2 years before it came out. And they've migrated a bunch of that capability into the P-Series, which was totally stealth until the embargo lifted a week ago Tuesday. I thought that was kind of a different approach. But what's great is that they've migrated a bunch of stuff from a pretty expensive reference series down into a TV that many, many more people can afford.
Yeah, it's kind of like General Motors, building concept cars. And obviously they put a lot of R&D into those high-end sets to prove some concepts, and for it to come onto the market at the price point that they've entered the market with the wide color gamut and Dolby Vision, with the firmware for HDR10 coming down the pipe, I was just immediately struck, and my first thought was, I got to get my hands on one of these.
Well, you and a lot of other people.
And I did.
Yeah, and you did. You went out the next day, I guess, right? And Best Buy actually had them in stock. This is another really cool thing about this P-Series launch. Most of the time when we get an announcement of a new TV or something, it's like, well, we're going to make this new TV come out, maybe 3 months, 6 months from now. No, the announcement was made. The embargo was lifted. The TVs were there, available at Best Buy and on the Vizio website to order anyway. So you actually went down to a Best Buy and they had one and you bought one.
Well, I went online and the inventory started to propagate the stores in the warehouse about 6 o'clock that evening. And it looked like you could drive to a warehouse and pick one up. But I checked again a half an hour later, and all of a sudden 4 of the local stores had inventory on the 75 and the 65, I think. And, I was looking for a bigger one. So I figured, I'm going to grab it. So I went down and picked it up and dragged it home and took the M80 off the wall and put this one on the wall in about 15 minutes with the help of my boys, and had it plugged in and running, and just really immediate great first impressions.
Well, we're going to talk about out-of-the-box versus calibrated performance. And Tyler, I wanted to get to you here because you're representing SpectraCal, which makes calibration software and sells meters as well to do the calibrations. And SpectraCal, as it currently exists, has a workflow, as it's called, for Dolby Vision high dynamic range, right?
Yes. So we worked very closely with Vizio and Dolby to create this workflow, and enabled the special Dolby Vision encoded patterns that are needed to put the display into Dolby Vision mode to take the measurements. Even currently, there is no actual hardware pattern generator that can generate those patterns. So I know they're working with pattern generator manufacturers, but currently only CalMan can generate the patterns needed to put the TV into Dolby Vision mode.
So the TV needs to receive some sort of metadata, I assume, that says this is Dolby Vision, go into Dolby Vision mode, right?
Yeah, it's actually embedded into each frame of the video or each test pattern.
Right. Now, speaking of color gamut, one of the big announcements of the P-Series is that it's able to achieve or reproduce a range of colors that's 96% of the gamut called P3, which is the range of colors that you see when you go to a digital cinema. And that's kind of what we're hoping for with Dolby Vision and other high dynamic range content. Tyler, the patterns that you have, do they extend out to P3 or close to it?
Well, they don't inherently have a color space since they're RGB based. 250 or 235, 235, 235 is 10,000 nits, and 235 00 would be the red, fully saturated Rec 2020 red. So
well, except that you use the word the number 235, which is 8-bit.
Yeah,
but really, aren't we talking about 10-bit?
Yes, technically, but most people are familiar with 8 bits. When I start saying 940 and stuff, it confuses people. But
okay,
so to go from 8-bit to 10, you just quadruple the number, and it will be the equivalent of the 10-bit number.
Okay, so you're right. The test patterns don't have any gamut in them at all. It says, this is the deepest red I can do. This is the deepest blue I can do. This is the deepest green I can do. Here's the white I can do. You, TV, go figure out what you can do with this information. Yeah. So, Tom, you bought the 75-incher, which is the largest one. Comes in 50, 55, 65, and 75. And we should say the prices, the 50 is $1,000, the 65 is $2,000. The 55's in the middle there somewhere at $1,300 or $1,500, something like that. And the 75 lists for, I think, $38. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think $37.99, right?
Yeah, exactly. I round them up when they end in 99 cents.
There you go.
But 75, is pretty decent size. Is that what you had before? You had a Vizio M series before.
Yeah, I had the 80-inch television, and you know, I really struggled with the idea of giving up that 5 inches, but when you turn this thing on, it just sucks you in. So no real loss there.
No real loss there. Okay.
Bigger is always better, but I'm not feeling disappointed at all.
Okay, good. Glad to hear it. One of the other big important features of this new series, all of them, is that they use a backlight we call FALD, F-A-L-D, full array local dimming, which, unlike most of their competition, puts the LEDs directly behind the LCD panel instead of just along the edges. Now, most of the competition puts the LEDs along the edges in order to make a super thin TV, but it causes uniformity problems. Now, Vizio, I think since last year, all of their TVs basically are FALD, which gives you better uniformity, possibly deeper blacks. And so they've done what most other companies put in their high-end, their flagship products, but it's throughout their range. And this is another thing that, you know, Vizio's seriously shaking up the industry for doing that. Tom, well, let me start with Tyler. Tyler, you guys have a 55-inch, I think, there at SpectraCal?
Yes, we have the 55-inch model.
You don't have any other models, though. And the reason I ask is, from what Vizio told me, the 55-inch uses a type of LCD panel called IPS, in-plane switching. The other sizes of the P-Series use VA, vertical alignment LCD panels. And the difference, more or less, is IPS gives you wider viewing angles, but less deep blacks, whereas VA gives you deeper blacks, but a narrower viewing angle, such that when you go off axis, it starts looking not as good, quicker. Have you, with the IPS panel, Tyler, seen any evidence of not as deep blacks as you might like, or anything like that?
Not that I've seen. I think that's more of, people say that with constant backlight displays. I think when you have the full array local dimming LEDs behind it, they can just turn them off, and then there's no light coming in that section of the display, which, especially on like black bars on 239 movies, that comes into play. I think people get that. I don't know what I'm trying to say. They get that expression because IPS computer monitors usually don't have variable backlights and local dimming.
Well, that's a good point. Maybe the IPS panel will give you the best of both worlds, a wider viewing angle and still plenty deep blacks because of this FALD backlight. Now, Tom, yours is a VA panel. I assume you don't necessarily often watch way off to the angle, but if you go off axis far, do you find that the picture quality degrades significantly?
No, I think it's actually a little better than the M80 was. Slightly better. The direct view from a direct view, it's very, very high contrast. The blacks are very rich, very deep. The colors are very saturated. You get about 35, 40 degrees off angle either direction, and you'll start to see the red desaturate, and you'll start to lose a little bit of black level. But this thing is so black that from my primary viewing position, I'm about 30 degrees, about 9 feet back, and it just looks great. And
sorry, your primary seating position is off axis?
Mine personally, the place I like to sit is off axis. It's a family room environment, not a home theater environment. So,
I see. Okay.
A place where I sit is off axis, but to counter that a little bit, I use an articulating wall mount. So if I'm home alone and I'm working and I want to listen to, news in the background, I can angle that television, 5 degrees, toward me. And that really helps a lot with the ambient light in the room. There's some windows across from the panel, and it counteracts a little bit of the effect of the VA panel. But this television, the reds are so deep, the blacks are so deep. 30 degrees is really nothing.
Mm-hmm. I actually took a picture of the entire P-Series at the briefing that we got before the embargo was lifted. That's picture number 0 there, Josh. And as you can see, I was off axis, obviously, and it still looked remarkably good. So I agree, the off axis performance is surprisingly good. Well, let's talk about the other. Well, first of all, let's talk about content. And here's yet another important thing that a lot of people discussed, shall we say, on AVS, which is that it has no over-the-air tuner. You know, most TVs have a tuner that you could hook up to an antenna and catch over-the-air broadcasts. But of course, we don't have UHD, Ultra HD broadcasting yet. Probably won't for a couple years. So what it would do would be to bring in high definition broadcasts, which it would then upscale. So what do you guys think of whether or not they should have included a tuner? Tyler, let's start with you.
Well, as a TiVo user for the last like 8 or 10 years, it doesn't really apply to me. Even like the cable company or satellite company DVRs, I can't stand. So that's just me.
Okay, so you use your TiVo for over the air?
No, I use it for cable.
Oh, for cable. Okay, but then that goes into an HDMI port on the TV, and you don't care whether it has an internal tuner or not.
Yes.
How about you, Tom?
You know, I haven't used an over-the-air tuner for about 10 years. I respect the guys that do use them, though, and I understand the disappointment that they removed it. But they're so cost-effective to go out into the market and buy something, you know, to augment it. To me, it's just a non-issue. I consume all my content either, you know, over cable. I'm an Xfinity user. And obviously, you know, Netflix, my kids are all over Netflix all the time. And obviously now a big fan of Vudu because of the streaming UHD Dolby Vision titles. I've pretty much tried all the streaming services, all the set-top boxes. I've got an Apple TV and a Roku. And now this TV shows up with casting apps that do Dolby Vision. So some stuff might be going on eBay.
Well, casting is what we're going to talk about next. But first, a couple comments from the chat room. One muchacho says, no tuner? That's a deal breaker for me. So, you know, for some people, that is a deal breaker. And if that's the case, then so be it. Unfortunately, you won't be able to take advantage of what this set does offer, even though it doesn't have an internal tuner. Rusty Bone. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I would encourage people to try to look past it a little bit and give the set a look, because it's amazing for the money.
That's what it certainly sounds like to me. Rusty Bone says, is the glass on this series highly reflective? Good question.
No, it has the same matte finish or semi-matte finish panel that the M series had. I mean, I guess I can't say that it's absolutely identical, but in my eyes, it looks identical. And so it's got a little bit of a diffusing effect, but it's still reflective. And, you know, if there's a window, a daylight window in the room in direct angle to it, you're going to see it. But I counteract that with, like I said, with my articulating wall mount. You can angle it down or angle it out a little bit, and it makes the TV that much more usable. And this thing is so bright. There's no ambient situation that it can't be useful in.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute. One of the features that Vizio touted during the briefing was that it gets you can put a full white field, fill the screen with white, and it will output 600 nits of light, which is pretty darn bright. So I think you're right that, you know, it's got plenty of light output for just about anything you need, any kind of ambient light you have in there. But they chose not to submit it for Ultra HD Premium certification. Now, Tyler, I don't know if you can talk to this at all, and if you can't, that's fine. But if you can, I'd love to hear what you have to say about Ultra HD Premium certification. And we know that Vizio and the UHD Alliance have been in arguing a bit, shall we say, over this. What's your take on that whole situation?
I think there's some disagreement on the testing methodology, like how big of a pattern should you be using. Obviously, Vizio seems like they're prioritizing being able to make the whole screen as bright as possible. But other manufacturers' TVs don't behave like that. So I think that has something to do with it.
Mm-hmm. Certainly, with high dynamic range, you're typically not going to get a full white screen at full blast. That the highest brightness is going to be what are called specular highlights, little reflections off of shiny surfaces in an image, that sort of thing, which in many cases can be brighter than what a TV can do full range. And we just need more time to see what's gonna happen there. Go ahead.
But this panel performs at full brightness across the entire panel, I believe, at their spec brightness. Is that true, Tyler?
I haven't done a full test on different window sizes, but other people probably will once they get into calibration software in their hands. Not a lot of enthusiasts have actually set up the Dolby Vision patterns and posted measurements and stuff, because up until the P-Series, only the reference series had it, and I think there was only a couple people that posted on AVS that had them.
That had that, yeah.
Right. Well, a lot more people are going to have it now for sure. Terry K is asking sort of the next question, which has to do with the Android tablet. Terry K says, my main concern with the set is it's being tied to an Android tablet and casting all the apps to the set. And this is yet another paradigm shift that Vizio has introduced here. The apps that you normally see in a smart TV are in the TV itself, and they're maybe listed across the bottom, or you see a screen where they're listed, and you have to navigate around with a cursor and a up, down, right, left arrow cluster and find the thing, Netflix or Vudu or whatever, and click into that and go that way. This whole paradigm with the Vizio series and Google Cast has flipped that on its head. Tom, tell us a little bit about what they did there.
Well, it's a major change in how we're going to interact with these devices. Obviously, we're used to using radio frequency remotes or IR remotes and IP protocol remotes, and now here comes apps on a smartphone or on a tablet like the Android tablet, and it's a great device. I've always been an Apple guy. The first Android device I've ever had in my house, and I'm very impressed with it. It's very light. It's very well built. It's smooth. It's reasonably easy to navigate. But the fact that it's a great tablet misses the point. And what we really need it to be is a great remote, and we've got a little bit of a firewall between the future of how we're going to manage content to these displays versus where we're at today. And to solve those problems today, I use a Harmony because I've got a fairly sophisticated entertainment system, and I manage an AVR and multiple set-top boxes, the display itself, some home theater lighting, my thermostats in the house. And you really, in order for that to be user-friendly for the entire family, you really need to get that onto one device and a button that somebody can push that says, watch 4K Blu-ray or watch, a Dolby Vision movie on Vudu. And they push a button and the movies come up and they hit play, and you make it simple. Right now, there's really no way to automate using the apps on the phone and tying it all together with everything else that you've got in your theater unless you turn on HDMI control and or CEC ARC. And my history with CEC ARC has been problematic. And so my philosophy about that has been to just leave it off. But this is going to push that back into my house. And at some point in time when my AVR functionality is full, there's a little, we can come back to that point. But at some point in time, I'm going to turn that back on and see whether or not I can overcome the need to have to make a channel change on my AVR to be able to monitor the audio coming out of the TV. So that would take one more step out. But there's no way to program on the Harmony to launch an application, put the television into casting mode, start a movie. So right now, you got to bounce between some of your control apps or something like the Harmony, and then the Vizio application and or the actual broadcasting applications like Netflix or YouTube or Vudu. You got to move back and forth between the apps. Now, my goal today was to just use the tablet and see, after I programmed all my stuff into it last night, to see whether or not it was really practical to not have a physical remote. And my conclusion is no problem for me. And I think I could teach my tech-savvy kids to deal with the bouncing between apps, no problem. I would question whether or not my wife would be tolerant of that. But I succeeded in saying, yeah, you can just use the tablet. But there's a couple of glaring things that jump out at you. And the first is when you pick that tablet up to do something quickly, like mute the sound, or you want to turn the volume down, or you just want to turn the TV off for whatever reason, you got to activate the screen. You got to get yourself to the right spot. And, you got to, it's just, there's no physical button that will allow you to do that stuff. And I think in order for the tablet to really become the centerpiece of your home entertainment system, you're going to need some physical buttons on that tablet at some point in time to be able to quickly do some things that we're used to on our button remotes. And I think in our earlier conversation today, Scott, you suggested that you're a button guy, and there's a lot of people that are button guys, and they're not going to like some of the workarounds dealing with the tablet. But I do believe that the tablet is the right approach. Dead-end applications in hardware on televisions, that's not a real good solution. You've already seen, as these internet smart TVs have evolved, apps getting abandoned and no further development on this or that. This solves that whole problem. And
right, because the apps actually reside on the tablet, not in the TV, so they can be updated and changed much more easily.
And nothing proprietary about them, So
right. You can in fact put the Vizio app called SmartCast, I think, onto any Android or iOS device. It doesn't have to be this tablet that comes with the TV. So
I've replicated the entire setup on my iPhone. So I've got all the same apps. It isn't as deeply integrated. The Vizio app on the iPhone doesn't work the way that it does on the Android tablet because it can't do some of the same things the same way. But you get about 95% of the integration on your iPhone or your iPad. So I think you're right. That flexibility is great.
And you do make a good point. You're right. I'm a button guy. I'd rather have physical buttons, at least for certain functions. And just to be fair, Vizio also ships an IR remote, a little remote. I don't have a picture of it, but it's a small one that lets you do things like change the volume and mute and stuff like that, very basic stuff, which is physical buttons. So that sort of solves that problem, except it's another remote.
It's another remote. I got a table load of those.
Yeah.
we all do, someday we're all going to go and find remote heaven, and there's going to be a mountain of remotes.
Exactly.
I think that the number one thing that's bugging me about the tablet, and the thing that I miss the most, is the ability to do fine track scrubbing. And
so moving quickly through a file.
Yeah, and doing it efficiently and in a kind of a predictable way.
You can't do that with your. You don't have that ability with your finger and some sort of progress bar on the tablet.
Yeah. Netflix is a little better than Vudu and YouTube because it actually gives you a preview as you scrub, so you can see the scene that you want to get to. But I would just say this, that they're very much in their infancy on how you're going to control the playback functions, being able to fast forward, rewind, slow motion. It's a big step back there, but I don't expect that to last very long. And what I hope is that Vizio and Google and all these app developers get together quickly and create some kind of a way to tie into a primary control application, if that ends up being the Vizio application, and a way to have everybody attached to that with their proprietary functions, but yet have some kind of a master central device for all the basic functions that all devices have. Mm-hmm. And be able to do that so that we can bridge this gap between multiple apps and having to bounce around. That is going to be a problem for families. And it's a great TV, and I think most kids are smart enough to figure it out on their own. But there's going to be some people that have big thumbs that are going to be struggling with it.
Now, one thing I want to make sure we explain here is that this is a Google Cast device. Vizio worked with Google for 2 years, they say, to make this P-Series basically a Google Cast device. And what happens is all the apps are on the tablet, but then you say, okay, I want to watch this thing on Netflix. And the tablet tells the TV, okay, go out on the internet, find this URL, stream this thing in. So that's sort of how Google Cast works. And I want to make sure people understand that, because a lot of people are saying, oh, you mean the content comes into the tablet and then mirrors to the TV? No, that's not how it works. And the other thing about that, though, that's really important for people to understand is it arises out of a feud between Amazon and Google, right? Amazon and Google are somewhat competitive, and they don't want each other's stuff on their thing. So Amazon, for example, has said, we will not allow our content, our original content, Amazon Instant Video, to be streamed onto a Google device. So that's it. You can't stream any Amazon content directly onto this TV because it's a Google device. You'd need a Amazon device like a Fire TV, or I think Roku also has access to Amazon content, but neither of those devices, none of the external devices, allow you to stream HDR, high dynamic range, which Amazon is now offering. So that's one kind of negative here for Vizio P-Series owners, is that for the moment, they don't have access to high dynamic range content on Amazon. They do on Netflix, Vudu. Is there any place else? MGO has it. I don't know if that's available on this TV. Tom, do you?
Yeah. At this point, I've streamed Marco Polo off of Netflix and Dolby Vision, and then 5 or 6 UHD Dolby Vision titles off of Vudu.
Right. Vudu's the primary source right now. Yeah.
I would hope that some of these guys come to their senses. You know, Amazon's in the business of selling content, and I would think that they would want to get their content into as many hands as possible. And there's too many people trying to be king of the hill.
Yeah.
And I think everybody just needs to accept that they can get a piece of the pie and get that Amazon app on the tablet and get HDR turned on, and let's go.
Mm-hmm. The other thing I wanted to make sure everybody understood about this tablet paradigm is that you can search for things and it will find them on whatever apps you have on there, right? So if you search for, I don't know, Christian Bale, you'll find movies that Christian Bale is in on Netflix, on Vudu, on any of the apps that are there. So there is some sort of aggregation going on. Am I right about that?
Yeah, I haven't tested that a lot yet. I've been still pretty consumed just in the technical aspects of using it and getting it set up. But I do understand that there's pretty deep voice search capability.
Okay, so we'll get a report from you later on that. Next, I want to turn my attention to calibration. And Tyler, I'm going to bring you in for this. But before I do, I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsor for this episode, which is Epson. Now, Epson's revolutionary EcoTank line of printers for home and office introduced a new age in printing. The new EcoTank ET4550 wireless all-in-one printer doesn't use ink cartridges. Instead, it features an innovative refillable ink tank. It comes with enough ink to print up to 11,000 black pages or 8,500 color pages, equivalent to about 50 ink cartridge sets. You're loaded and ready to print for up to 2 years. Powered by Epson's leading-edge precision core technology, it delivers high-speed, vivid colors and laser-quality black text, plus auto two-sided printing, a 30-page auto document feeder, and easy wireless printing from tablets and smartphones. It's no wonder the ET4550 printer was named a CES 2016 Innovation Awards honoree. All EcoTank printers deliver an unbeatable combination of convenience and value with ultra-low-cost replacement ink bottles. Now you have the freedom to print without running out of ink. Visit Epson.com/EcoTank today to transform the way your home, office, or work group prints. For the best combination of ease and value, turn to the new Epson EcoTank printers. That's epson.com/EcoTank. And we thank Epson very much for their support of Home Theater Geeks. Epson, exceed your vision. Okay, I think it's time to start talking a little calibration here. And Tyler, I'd like you to start with, you work at SpectraCal, and SpectraCal is deep into video calibration. So what are some of the challenges that we're going to be facing now in the era of high dynamic range?
One thing is we're not calibrating to a standard anymore. So previously with SDR material, we're calibrating to Rec 709 and BT 1886, which most TVs actually exceeded, and you were able to, bring the colors back into those targets that were used when they were mastering the content for home video. But
and
now,
by the way, just let me make sure everybody understands, BT 709 is the range of colors, and BT 1886 is what we call the gamma curve, which determines how much light, how the TV responds in putting out light in response to the brightness code values coming in with the signal. Just wanted to make sure everybody got that.
yeah, and make sure you stop me if I start doing
Well, that's
letter soup. So
alphabet soup. I know our business is so full of it. So pardon me if I interrupt you to make sure everybody understands what we're talking about here.
Well, I read way too many white papers, and those are full of them.
Okay, so that was then. This is now. We no longer have a standard.
So now our mastering display that we're actually grading the content on the HDR and wide color gamut content are currently much more capable than the actual home video displays. So what we have to do is remap all that content down to what the TV is capable of. And so that varies based on each TV. So HDR10 and Dolby Vision currently take a different approach to that.
And these are the two formats for high dynamic range that are currently far more prevalent than any other format. HDR10 is an open standard. Dolby Vision is a proprietary standard, and I use the word standard pretty loosely here, that comes from Dolby, and which the P-Series implements Dolby Vision and HDR10 coming down the pike in a couple months.
Yeah, so Dolby did some research, and they created a new electro-optical transfer function, also known as an EOTF, and that's what the replacement for a gamma curve is with HDR. So they gave that to SMPTE, and they standardized that as ST2084, and that's what HDR10 uses as well. So that's
both systems use it, Dolby Vision and HDR10.
Yes. So on the Dolby Vision side, Most of the content, if not all, is being mastered on something called the Dolby Pulsar monitor. It's a 4,000 nit LCD monitor. It's 42 inches. It has a P3 gamut. So all the content is first mastered on that, and then they do, if they're going to do a theater release for Dolby Vision in the theater, then they do a trim pass on the Christie laser projector that they use in the theaters. And then they, for the home video release, they use the full 4,000 nit version, and then the TV has some logic in it. This is Dolby's secret sauce that they have with their dynamic metadata that it knows what the TV is capable of, which they call their golden reference values. And they use that with their tone mapper to map the content down to the capabilities of the TV. So that's Dolby's process.
Now, does in that case, every Dolby Vision capable TV has a quote unquote golden reference, that is a set of parameters that define what the TV's capabilities are?
Yes. So the manufacturers and Dolby work during the research and the pre-production of the displays, and then they come up with what the displays can actually do, and it's kind of like an average of a group of them. So it's not each display itself doesn't have unique values in there. But then Dolby provides SpectraCal those values, so we can put them as targets in CalMan, so we can verify that the display is actually hitting those, so their tone mapper will work correctly. If the display isn't hitting those values, then the tone mapper expects the display to behave one way, and it's actually doing another. So that's why Dolby brought us in, so we could get this whole calibration thing figured out before the TV's actually launched.
Well, that's good. That's really good, in fact. And so you have golden reference values for the P-Series, or not yet? Is it only the reference series that you have?
So currently, we're very close to releasing a beta version of CalMan 5.7. And in the previous version of CalMan 5.6, we have the golden reference values for the Vizio reference series, the 120 and the 65-inch. Now, those were like hard-coded, saved into CalMan, and we didn't want to have to release a new release of CalMan for each new Dolby Vision TV, especially when we get 1 or 2 years down the road and there's tons of them.
Right.
So we worked with Dolby to create a file format, a golden reference file format that the manufacturers will supply that can be imported into CalMan 5.7. So we don't have to ship them with all of them. So the manufacturers, it'd still be determined on how and where they're going to be hosted, but the manufacturers are going to start providing the golden reference files to reviewers and enthusiasts that would like to calibrate their monitors. And they have metadata in there saying like what firmware this is based on, so there won't be any confusion of having a mismatch in firmware if they've updated the behavior of the backlight or how it maps the colors, or they changed what the golden reference values inside the TV are. You want to make sure that that's the same firmware as you have your golden reference target that's being imported into CalMan.
Mm-hmm. But it sounds like with an import function like you're talking about for 5.7, if the capabilities of the TV change or new TVs come out, manufacturers will just publish that file and users of CalMan can just download it and add it to their collection.
Absolutely. That's
fantastic.
That's the intended way for it to work.
Mm-hmm. Now, what about HDR10? Is there such a thing as golden reference in that case?
So currently there is not. The ITU is working on a draft spec of how they recommend rolling off the highlights based upon how bright the TV itself is. And because that's what Dolby's doing. They roll off the content, they remap the gamut. So the ITU is working on something that's going to define that.
That's by the way, that's the International Telecommunications Union, which is one of the standards bodies for our entire industry.
Yeah, they're the ones that published Rec 709 and Rec 2020. So, and BT1886. So they're the ones that came up with all that. So people will definitely listen to what they have to say. So we're thinking the HDR10 manufacturers will start having their TVs, their roll off of the highlights be the same across the board. Because right now it's kind of like each manufacturer is interpreting the HDR10 metadata differently. So there's no industry standard on how to roll off HDR10. There's no industry standard on how to remap the gamut down to the gamut of the TV. So currently, what we've been recommending people to do with HDR10 is just have it follow ST2084 until it rolls off. Because a lot of the displays, or not a lot, but some displays, it will not even follow ST2084 at all in the bottom end, and you have to use the gamma controls to get it to closely follow the EOTF.
One more little interruption with alphabet soup. ST2084 is the SMPTE standard for the EOTF, or PQ curve, it's sometimes called as well, which is used in high dynamic range content. And Dolby Vision calls it PQ, SMPTE calls it ST2084. Then there's ST2086, which I think you mentioned as well, which is the metadata that is currently defined for high dynamic, for HDR10. But that's what's called static metadata. And you told me before we went on the air that SMPTE is actually working on a dynamic metadata standard called ST2096, I believe, and that'll help, you think, this whole situation?
Well, I think they're trying to do the same thing that Dolby has already implemented, which has scene by scene metadata where it's actually embedded into each frame or in each scene. So it can tell the display, this is going to be a dim scene, so start ratcheting your backlight down now so it's not a noticeable big drop when we switch scenes. So one thing that's unclear is if current TVs are going to be upgradable to that dynamic metadata, if it's just going to be a software thing, or if it's going to require a new revision of HDMI, in which that could require new hardware, or it could be a software update like some people are doing with going from HDMI 2.0 to 2.0A, which is the same change that Vizio is going to be making to add HDR10. So it's a lot up in the air on how that dynamic metadata is actually going to make it to market, and where and how.
Man, we are in the Wild West here, aren't we?
Well, let me just
go ahead.
I was just going to say, Scott, let me just put a pitch in for Dolby Vision and for the work that the guys at SpectraCal have done with their early workflow on calibrating for Dolby Vision. I was lucky enough to get a evaluation copy from Tyler the other night, and kind of learned it on the fly, and really got a remarkable early result on getting the gray balance set up. And Dolby Vision looks amazing. It's pretty much from a user perspective, it's pretty much plug and play, push a button, and it just renders it properly to this Vizio P-Series set. It looks outstanding.
Well, this is what we're going to talk about now in the last 12, 15 minutes we have on the show. Let's take a look at some of your pre-calibration and post-calibration results from CalMan, which you took on this P-Series TV. First up, you calibrated the BT709, which is graphic number 2. This is the pre-calibration results. And as you can see, there's a lot more blue in that white than there should be. Explain to us just briefly what's going on in this image.
Are you talking? Are you asking me, Scott?
Oh, either way, Tom. Let's start. Let's let you do it, because you've actually took these measurements.
Well, it's consistent with what I was seeing. I mean, the image definitely had a blue cast, and my gut instincts were to let it be until I got a meter on it. I used the TV for about 4 days, and Monday came around this week. I put the meter on it and took the preliminary readings, and went into the 2-point white balance and made the adjustments, and then went into the 11 point, and it calibrates in the 709 spec really, really easily. And I imagine it's because you're not pushing at the extreme ends of the capability of the brightness. But the post screen that you've got there should show that it really pulled in nice. And that was done very, very quickly. I didn't spend a lot of time on it, and it's well within Delta, and it really made a difference.
Mm-hmm. Well, it certainly looks a lot better. Let's take a look. Let's skip over a couple of these graphics, Josh, and go to number 6, which is the Dolby Vision pre-calibration.
So can I interject here for a second?
Oh, yeah, sure. Please, Tyler.
So since Tom had the Calman 5.6, he doesn't actually have the golden reference for the P-Series.
For the P-Series, right.
So I told him to use the one for the RS 120, which was, it was definitely closer than the RRS 65. And I also told him just do the 2-point. Don't mess with the EOTF because that isn't going to be correct until we get the golden reference for the P-Series in there. But so he just did the 2-point. So you're going to see in his results that the EOTF tracking isn't correct, but you can see how the actual chromaticity is correct.
Right. So let's take a look at that number 6 Dolby Vision pre-calibration. Here it's still too blue, of course, and we can see that the error in the colors and the grayscale are pretty bad. But then if you use a 2-point calibration, which is a simpler way to do a grayscale calibration, we'll look at number 7, Dolby Vision post-cal. And I find this very interesting because you can see immediately that you used a 2-point calibration because about 30% and about 80% are correct, and those are the points where you calibrate. Tyler, is that correct? Is it 30% and 80%?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then outside of those 2 points, it still is not terribly accurate. You can see in the grayscale errors that they sort of form a hump there in the mid-range. The color errors are not quite right yet. But again, this is not even the proper way to calibrate this set because there is no P-Series golden reference in the software yet. But you can see that the colors in the CIE diagram in the lower right are hitting their targets very well.
And also, I wanted to talk about how easy it is to do the 10-point and 2-point on the P-Series because you can use the remote. The tablet remote. You don't have to keep going into this menu system of the TV. And also, with HDR, I've noticed almost universally, if you have any menu item up, it will affect the reading. Even if it's not covering the area, just because like the local dimming and the backlight is changing. So being able to use the tablet to change the cuts and gains is a huge deal because nothing comes up on the screen. So you can just have your pattern there and be making stuff on the tablet. And on previous models, even the Vizio reference series, you had to go into the menu, change it, come out, get rid of the menu, take a measurement, and then go back in. This is like a huge shift and really simplifies the process of doing a Dolby Vision calibration.
Man, I got to tell you, I'm so with you on that. I've calibrated in my review process. I've calibrated tons of TVs and projectors, and you're right. Some cases it's worse than others, but in almost every case, if the menu is up there, even a small part of the menu, like the brightness control or the cuts or gains of red, down at the bottom where they don't actually overlap the piece of the screen you're trying to capture or measure, the result could be different, whether or not that little menu thing is on there or not. And when I heard that you can do all your calibrations and take care of all your controls on the tablet and nothing shows up on the screen but the test pattern, man, oh man, what a huge shift in paradigm that is for those of us who, calibrate. Tom, what was your experience with that? Were you comfortable with looking down at the tablet and changing controls, pardon me, and then looking up at the TV and not seeing the menu? How big of a deal was that for you?
Well, I think, Tyler's dead on. It's nice not to have that on-screen menu skewing your readings. More importantly, having that tablet in your hand and being able to make those measurements is a really nice evolution of interacting with the calibration software. I will say it would be nice if they add a fine point adjustment button so you can move in single increments instead of having to, mess around with a little slider and to get it to stick to a specific number. Certain parts of the range are very, very sensitive, and you have to hit a very specific number, and it'll jump. So at some point in time, it would be nice if on the extents of the slider, they have a +1 and a -1 on the other side. That would be would be a good user interface evolution. But I will say this about the workflow that CalMan has. I'm not an experienced calibrator. I've got a good technical background and I understand it, but I haven't done a lot of them. It's extraordinarily simple with some basic concept and understandings and understanding what your settings and your targets should be, what kind of LED profile you should be using. Once you got that stuff down, going through the workflow that these guys have set up is really, really easy, and you can get a great result without a lot of experience if you're willing to make the investment. And I just wanted to get that out there.
Cool, man. Tyler, you agree? A +1, -1 button would be a good thing here, don't you think?
Yeah, I ran into the same problem, and we don't actually have the tablet here because it wasn't built yet when we got our P-Series. So
you have like a prototype or a pre-production sample?
Yes, and I've been using the Galaxy S7, just the normal one, and the screen's kind of small for the range. So if there was a plus and minus button on each side, that would be awesome.
Okay, Vizio, you listening?
I knew I was right about that, but
yeah. Well, I would agree with you too. I mean, I look at my phone or my tablet and I try to adjust something by swiping along. That wouldn't necessarily be very precise. And as I know, Tyler, Tom, you now know, very often you need to just increment by one click to get where you need to go. But increment or decrement by one click to get where you want to go. But by doing that, by sliding your finger along the screen of the tablet, it would be very difficult to do. So I agree with you on that. I'm going to lobby Vizio for that as well. I also want to make sure that I say, Tom, that you have said you're not a professional calibrator. You haven't done a lot of calibrations, but you did spend much of your career in the print world, and particularly in the pre-press part of the print world. And so you do have just a natural eye and a trained eye for color and how things look, shadows and so on. So you're not coming at this from a completely inexperienced perspective.
No, I mean, our job, in my business was to map a very broad range of printing processes to a design process, to a conversion to digital data process, to a proof that was supposed to look like what came out on that printing press. And there's so many different kinds of printing processes and different ink colors and the way ink hits paper. Yeah, I have a lot of experience with managing color. And this is different. We're dealing with video, we're dealing with monitors, but the management concepts are the same. And I'm still learning, a lot of the target space ideas and how all this works and how the different source light affects the image. But it's been a lot of fun. I've been digging into it pretty deep and enjoying it. Yep, I enjoy it. It's kind of truly a geek about this stuff, so I fit.
You fit right into this show, that's for sure.
Apparently, I was gonna say, you know, I encountered this golden reference concept, you know, the other night when I first read Tyler's paper. So I was digging through my Vizio box looking for a chocolate bar with a ticket in it. Where's the golden reference? You know,
where's the golden ticket? Where can I go to Willy Wonka? Yeah.
Yeah. Where is it?
Very good. Very good. Bleak in the chat room has a question about the measurements, the calibration measurements we saw earlier. What do the heights of the grayscale bars represent? Let's take a look at, let's see. Let's take a look at number 4, image number 4. Yeah, and if we can scroll to the left, yeah, that's basically what it is called the delta error, or delta E. And you want those bars to be as small as possible. Let's go back to number 6 and number 7. Number 6 shows us these gray bars, which are very high, relatively high, which means that there's a lot of error there. That it's not where the white of those different levels of gray is not where it's supposed to be. And if we go to number 7, we can see that in the mid-range of brightness, they're not really very good. I mean, they're okay. Well, 10-point calibration would make that much, much better. Now, by comparison, let's go to number 2 again, which is the standard dynamic range calibration, pre-cal rather. And, I don't see the bars there. Let's go to number 4 and see if we can see it there. There you can see the bars on the left, on the upper left. And this is only post-calibration. We didn't see pre-calibration, but that's looking very good. So that's what those gray bars mean. The bigger they are, the more error there is, the wronger it is, if you will. And the same thing with those the colored bars as well. There can be several different types of errors in the color of red, green, and blue, and then the secondaries, which are cyan, magenta, and yellow.
I see the question a lot, Scott, that people just on the forum, is it worth it? Is calibration worth it?
Good question.
And my opinion is you have to get your gray balance right. The image will really pop once you get your gray balance right. People always complain, why does my image look washed out? Why does it look like there's a haze over my image? Most often it's the gray balance. And once that gray balance is right, black becomes black, even if it's a 30% black, it's black. It's what makes the detail in an image. And without a proper gray balance, you really don't have anywhere to go.
And Tyler, I think you probably agree with that, right?
Yeah, I like to say getting the grayscale is like 75% or more of the calibration. Just getting a neutral gray, because if it's tinted towards blue, then every color is going to be shifted towards blue as well. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like if you had a canvas and it was tinted blue and you painted on top of it, everything, any color you added on top would be slightly shifted towards blue. So once you have a neutral gray, even if you don't touch the colors, even if you don't have a color management system, just getting the white point and the grayscale correct will actually improve the colors in the middle of the gamut.
Yeah, I've heard it said.
The apparent contrast.
Exactly. I've heard it said that grayscale is analogous to a canvas. And if you want the canvas to be as neutral and correct as possible, then all the colors you put onto it will be accurate. Now, for the last little bit here, we've got a couple of images, Tom, that you took with a camera, I guess, pointing at your new P-Series. One of them is before the gray balance, grayscale balance, and the other one is after. So let's take a look at those. Here's we're going to maybe go back and forth between them, but here's the first one. Tell us what we're seeing here between these two.
Well, I mean, obviously you can see the blue cast, and I'll to Tyler's point about getting the white, take a look at the water puddling in the path where they're standing, beyond and in front. And now toggle back to the post-cal. Look at how the neutral balance has made that look so much more detailed and contrasty. And then the shakes on the building, how much more neutral they are. It just makes the image look that much more real, and it looks more contrasty.
I agree. One thing I noticed between these two is in the couple there on the left who are embracing, in the pre-cal, if you can go to pre-cal and zoom in on that couple, you'll be able to see that there isn't very much detail in the guy's outfit in particular. And then if we go to post-cal, you can see a lot more detail in the clothing. That was something that my eye was drawn to immediately, other than the fact that the pre-cal had a blue cast to it, and the post-cal is much more neutral looking. So,
yeah, and it's a picture of a picture, so I don't want to get too technical with what's in the photograph. But I did lock the color balance, and the color temperature and the exposure. So when I bounced, when I essentially unloaded the picture controls to take the CMS changes, it was the same frame.
Right. Well, listen, we've run out of time, and to me, this is really exciting. This is, for so many reasons that we've talked about today, the P-Series represents kind of an evolution, or maybe even a revolution. I'm not sure I would go that far, but maybe. I might. I would consider it, because there's so many things about this. Can't even call it a TV because it doesn't have a tuner. So technically it's not a TV. It's a display or a monitor. There are so many things about it that are so interesting, and down at a price point that so many more people can afford than these high-end TVs, that I really wanted to spend the day talking about it. And I thank you both for being here. Tom, I know we ran a little over. I hope you're okay, but thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, the dogs are hungry.
Time to go feed the dogs. All right.
You got it.
And Tyler, thank you so much for being here as well and providing the perspective from SpectraCal.
Yeah, thanks.
Those of you who want to learn more about SpectraCal, by all means, go to SpectraCal.com. And you can find Tom on AVS Forum. His AVS username is Thomas, Thomas, FXLT. And I was drawn to his posts because he's very helpful, very matter of fact, just wanting to share information and help people understand without being snarky at all, which some people on AVS can be. So I really, really appreciate that. And those of you who want to learn more about the P-Series from a user perspective, Tom's a great guy to ask questions of there on AVS Forum, and that's at avsforum.com, of course, which is where you can find me, avsforum.com. You can email me at scott@twit.tv, and you can follow me on Twitter at htgeekscott and at AVS Forum. You can always find previous episodes of Home Theater Geeks right here at twit.tv/HTG and on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/twit Home Theater Geeks. Next week, my guest geek is scheduled to be Juan Reyes, the CTO of Blue Focus, one of a very few companies that are providing testing and certification services independently for Ultra HD Premium certification. So I'm really looking forward to talking with him about that whole process, and I do hope you will join us. Until then, geek out.